Welcome to the PrepZone show presented by Bevill State. I'm your host, Johnathan Bentley, joined by Zach McCullar. It's our last show of the year, and the year's almost over, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Very close. Coming up on Christmas first, though. And we're also going to mention our Player of the Year candidates and the winners. Kind of touched on it before. You can probably guess who these people are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
But, okay, let's start right off with the Player of the Year candidates. You remember who they were, right? There was 3 of them.
It was 4 of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, shows one I know.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a number 4 here. Let me underline that. Okay, there we go. Yes. But number 1, you want to talk about him a little?
Number 1 is Cam Deaver, and, I mean, we all knew that. I mean, after the first couple of weeks of the season, we all knew that he was going to be on this list. 2,472 total yards and 36 total touchdowns, and it should have been more.
Yeah, it could have been more. We've talked about the schedule was so bad. If I'm not mistaken, there was games where there was a game maybe he had 3 carries.
3 carries and 169 yards.
Yeah, and probably 2 touchdowns that game maybe.
Yeah.
But, I mean, had the schedule been a little bit tougher, he could have come close to 3,000. Who knows, right? But still, it's a pretty good year.
Oh,
2472.
definitely.
I don't know if we have had anybody reach that number in recent years. It's been a while.
Not a running back.
Yeah, and okay, so the next is Kashawn Pryor, the door quarterback. It's both juniors, by the way.
Yeah.
So Sean Pryor will be back next year, too.
That's going to be lethal.
Yeah. Now that they're in this system, these numbers will go up.
Oh, yes.
3,178 total yards and 34 touchdowns. He could run and throw. Basically, I've talked about this a lot. That off week, they changed offenses, and it started going through Pryor. And you saw they went undefeated after that until the playoffs, but it changed everything.
And a more important stat that it gets overlooked. He only threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
Against your 4A defense, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was 18-3. It's really, really good. And okay, you can talk about the next.
All right, our next is the Lynn quarterback, Cale Tittle. He had some prolific numbers: 3,217 total yards and 39 total touchdowns. He lit up pretty much most 1A defenses. I mean, he would light up most anybody, honestly. He's an electric player. He can run. He can throw. Heck, I was watching Lynn Addison covering it. He saved the day because right before halftime, he threw an interception, and it was about to go, or it was a fumble, actually, and it was about to go to the house. He comes in and lays the lumber on the returner and saves a touchdown. So he really did do everything for Lynn this year.
Yeah, I think there's no one-man team, but he probably meant more to his team than anybody.
I mean, him and Cole Kelly really did it for Lynn. I
mean, you look at Kelly, he had a great season.
I'm surprised he's not on the list.
2 1,000-yard rushers on the same team. One was quarterback, one's a running back. And fourth is Gavin Brown at corner, the only senior on this group. 1,944 total yards, 32 touchdowns. I mean, that's pretty good at the 4A level.
Oh, yes.
Rushed for 1,700 yards. And 2 of these guys were first-team All-State. I think they all should have been.
Yeah.
But Deaver and Tittle were both first-team in 1A, and they very deserving.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, we only had 3 total first-team. The other one was Braylon Roberts from Meek on their defense. All right, so who is the Player of the Year?
All right, our Player of the Year and somebody that I think really deserves it. I mean, all 4 of them really deserve it. I wish we could pass it out to all 4 of them, but we have to choose one. And it's going to be Cam Deaver, the electric Meek running back. I mean, the reason he was picked this year is just because how he carried that team.
Yeah, he did.
He was their one-man show, honestly.
It was fun to watch. I mean, he put up – last regular season game was against Oakman, and he just went off. 300-something yards. I mean, just –
against a 3A defense. And Ryan Hall is known as a good defensive coach.
Yeah, Oakman wasn't bad, but, well, it didn't matter. I mean, he just had a great season. We haven't seen anything like it. Now, he isn't the only winner. Now, okay, what I really don't like doing co-players of the year because it's kind of like a cop-out to me.
It is.
It is. But so we didn't do that. This is not a co-player of the year situation.
Yes.
This is the Walker County Player of the Year, which is separate.
It's a close second to Deaver. Very close.
And it is Pryor. It was clearly the best team in this county, a player in this county on the best team in the county.
Definitely.
There's no doubt about it. And the offense ran through them. Without him, where would they be? Would they have made the playoffs? Would they have went 6-4 or something like that?
I mean,
instead they won 8 games, second round of the playoffs, and this guy was just it's kind of like Deaver. It's just fun to watch. He's going to put up numbers. I love guys that put up numbers. I always like offense. And that's what Dora did for the first time I can remember in a long time.
They've always been really defensive.
Yes.
And Chavis is a defensive coach. I mean, he prides himself on his defense. He's a star defensive player at Alabama and in the NFL. So, I mean, to have an offensive player from Dora putting up this numbers, I'm sure Chavis was frustrated in practice at his defense, but there's nothing they could do. I mean, he's got a great defense. We'll get to them later, but just seeing how he put up those numbers, it's surprising.
Yeah, it's incredible. Because, I mean, he's always, I remember at Carbon Hill, he'd have his hand in the offense just trying to get something going. Right. And I think he kind of turned it over to some guys at Dora and said, see what you can do, and boom, changed everything. And I really think it changes everything going forward.
Oh, yes.
I mean, these guys are back. And his brother. Corey and Keyshawn are both back next year.
I think they'll be better next year than they are this year.
Yeah, that schedule's still tough, but now I think they know what they're doing.
Yes.
It was kind of it wasn't a foundation year, but it was a building year, and they really did well with that. All right, so now we go to the Coach of the Year. This is also really tough.
Oh, my, yes.
But so what do you got to say about the first guy on the list?
All right, our first guy is Houston Powell at Meek. He is the 1A Coach of the Year for Alabama High School football. His team went undefeated. I think the first undefeated regular season.
That's right.
For Meek, and lost in the second round of the playoff in the last minutes of the game. 11-1, Meek went. So Houston Powell is going to be our first nominee.
Yeah, the second is Mark Hastings. A lot of the same things from, Meek hadn't been good. That was our first region title since '90, when it wasn't even called region; it was called area. So they had never really won a true region title. But Lynn's had its moments much more recently.
2017.
2017, they were really good.
Regular season.
Yeah. Now they went 9-1 the regular season, 11-2 this year, back to the third round. But it was mainly because the reason he's on this list, not 11-2, is 2-8 last year.
Exactly.
They didn't win a region game. Their wins, I think, were Cherokee and Shoals. I mean, it was a bad season. So he's number 2 on the list, and a guy I used to cover closely is number 3.
That's Chavis Williams, the Dora head coach. We've mentioned him before. He really deserves to be on this list. I mean, even if they went 0-10, he deserves it because he's such a good coach. He puts so much work ethic. I mean, he was one of Nick Saban's players, and that cannot do any harm to your coaching career.
No.
So he, 8-4, that might not compare as much with 11-1 and 11-2 like the other coaches on the list, but he really deserves to be on this.
Yeah, he was the third guy on the list for a reason. 8-4. They started 2-3, so they actually went 6-1 down the stretch. Ran into a very good Randolph team that I underestimated.
Yeah, the only good team in the Huntsville area, you said?
Yes. Huntsville area not known for football, except for maybe Randolph this year. All right, so our Coach of the Year is Hastings. Now, that was very tough because, you look at all the first Meek did. Meek hadn't done a lot of these things ever, But, 2-8. Meek was 8-4 last year. They had a bump up to 11-1. Lynn increased 9 wins off last year.
That turnaround's pretty much what sealed it for him, I would say. He did it at Oakman. His first year, 2-8. Not great, but he built on it, and now he's at 11-2. What's he going to do next year?
Yeah,
he gets Kel Tittle back. So
a lot of their guys are back. Yeah,
we're not having a whole bunch of people graduate this year out of the area, and that just shows we're going to have a lot of strength in next year's schedule and with our teams.
A lot of these players we mentioned again, I think.
Oh yes,
and I don't know what Lynn can do. 11-2 and all this points. They set a record for points in the season, and so did Meek. So
now they got to beat that next year.
And it's a shame they don't play. The one time they didn't need to play was this year, Finney. That would have been at least they played Addison.
You look at some years where they're both 0-10, 1-9, 2-8, something like that. Yep. Now they're the 2 best teams in the county.
Yeah, when Parrish was good, Meek and Lynn were both bad. So it's come a long way. All right, so we're going to jump down here at the end for our Defensive Player of the Year, which we didn't really preview because it was kind of a slam dunk, I think, here. Like I said, Braylon Roberts did make All-State on the line for Meek. He had a lot of sacks, a lot of tackles, and that kind of thing. But so did Neil Foster. That is our Defensive Player of the Year, yes. Neil Foster, from Dora. He is actually a senior, so he will not be back.
Yeah, I hate that. I wish you'd be back next year.
So he came in late. He missed the first 3 games, and he still had 104 tackles 16 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. I mean, just incredible.
I mean, what would his numbers be if he'd have played all 12 games?
Well, they had been close to 150, maybe 140, something like that. I mean, just
that's amazing.
It's outstanding. And he's a great wrestler, too.
I think we had his first game, he put up, 20 tackles or something?
That's right. He was our Player of the Week.
Player of the Week, and he really deserved it. And he's put up a spectacular performance.
If I'm not mistaken, he either had another 20 tackle game or close to it. Maybe it was 19 or something like that. But the guy was just elite, next level. And that his return also kind of coincided with them getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it helped, I'll bet.
Like I said, they were 2-3 to start.
I mean, that probably made their offense better practicing against him.
Yep. I mean, they were 0-2. They lost the first 2 games, and then he came back. He got 100%, and once he was 100%, you can forget it.
I mean, those first 2 games. So I think every team in the county would have lost those first 2 games.
Yeah, that was a very tough schedule.
I mean,
It's the same one next year.
Ugh.
Aniana gets, they're like a championship level team, and Winfield will always get pretty far. They always have a great regular season. It's hard to beat them in the regular season, especially
and they're always in both Carbon Hills and Oakman's region, and that's always been a tough mountain to climb.
Yes,
for both teams.
Oh God, yes, they've had a lot of trouble. So Dora actually wins 2 things. So Sean Pryor wins Walker County Player of the Year, and Foster wins our overall Defensive Player of the Year. Okay, so that leaves, now that we're done with that, is there a game that stood out to you this year? Did you write down anything?
Well, there was one game, and it was in the playoffs, and I know I've mentioned this game to death, but it bears repeating. Addison, and I mean, while it wasn't a great game, the atmosphere, just the stakes in it, if you can imagine high school playoff game, that was the epitome of it, because both teams played their hearts out. It was kind of a lopsided score. Lynn won, of course, but it was a fun experience just to be there. Yeah,
there were a lot of fun games this year, it seems like.
And Addison Meek
is up there.
It is, yes.
That was electric. I had to park at the baseball field. At Meek, do you even know where that's at? It's up the road?
Probably not.
It's a long walk in the dark. Yeah. My phone out. But I will mention the playoff game I went to, Lynn, last round. Well, I saw Fife, which was first time I saw Fife. It was very impressive.
Yeah, just
very sound. They don't make mistakes.
I mean, I saw Winfield this year in person. I saw Gorda this year in person. Fayette County this year in person. A bunch of ranked teams, and of course, I saw Lynn in person. So, I mean, we had some really good teams come into the area to face ours.
It was a good year for football around here. But I will mention that Coosa Christian Lynn game. Coosa Christian, which was dumpster fire. If you look a couple years ago, so many Christian was beating this team.
Yes, and now they
go to the
flip switch.
Yeah, make the semis, and we're a play away from making the championship game. Their coach got Coach of the Year, and I think he deserved it. 1A to get that far for a team that was not very good a couple years ago. All right, so we didn't talk last week. We didn't have a show last week. We were going to talk about Mike Leach, so now we can talk about him this week later. Kind of remit. Now they already have a interim. They have
their full-time head coach now. They moved on, preparing for their Rely Quest Bowl in Tampa. Rely Quest Bowl in Tampa against Illinois, January the 2nd.
But yeah, I mean, I hate to see Leach. I mean, I can't remember a coach passing away in a season.
No,
never. And for it to be him, one of the best characters in the game, really hate to lose that. I mean, you always need characters.
Yeah, I see the story where he was an offensive analyst or something at Oklahoma, and he put a fake play sheet on the ground in front of the Texas bench. The Texas coaches had picked it up and were starting to call plays against it, and helped Oklahoma make it a close game. But, I mean, he was just such a funny guy. I mean, I've seen interviews. Nick Saban said, I always enjoyed talking to him. Didn't know what he was going to say, didn't know where our conversations were going to head, but at least I smiled.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we need more people like that instead of your typical, every coach is the same type deal. They won't say anything. This guy will talk about anything. You bring up absolutely anything, he'd talk about it. And he was a good innovator. That's the thing. He was also a great coach.
In the air raid, that's iconic.
Yeah, I don't know if he would ever fit in at like Alabama or Auburn, but he always went to the schools where he fit in perfectly, Texas Tech, Washington State, Mississippi State.
I mean, Washington State really needed him because they were in the dumps every year. They get him. They got Gardner Minshew, who's in the NFL right now. They put together a good couple of years there while he was up in Spokane.
That Minshew interview about him was great because he was said if it wasn't for him, he'd be coaching because he came to Alabama. He was going to go to Alabama.
He was, and then he changed his mind
to be coaching, and now he's still playing. He never thought he'd be an NFL quarterback, and that's all because of Leach. All right, so 41 bowl games. We're down. I think now we're 9 or 10 in now.
Yeah.
Do you have some Zach's picks for us this week?
No, I don't have any. I'm decided to spare you from the long 30 games that I could have picked.
We will say this: who is your championship team this year?
Georgia. I mean, by far. I think TCU can upset Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl.
I hope so.
But whoever Georgia plays, whether it's TCU or Michigan, it will probably just be ugly. Georgia's going to steamroll, I think, to their second straight national championship game. What happens next year when they have no Stetson Bennett?
They'll find somebody.
They'll have to. And then they'll start having coordinators picked off, and anybody who's been playing there, people are going to be after them in the transfer portal. So maybe Georgia won't fall victim to the whole success real quick and then falling back down. I mean, like Clemson.
Clemson kind of did that.
They did, and now they're your decent team. I mean,
they're playing Tennessee in the aptly named Orange Bowl this year. But yeah, I do. I think Georgia will win it too. I hate that. I really do. But
I mean, no offense to any Georgia fan.
No, I mean,
there.
I just don't like seeing Georgia good. So that's just
You're
me.
an Auburn fan. I
Who do I like to see do well though? I don't know.
You want to see Auburn? Yeah,
I'll pull for Vandy.
If Alabama doesn't win the national championship, Vandy's my next.
I like UAB. Yeah, I can pull for several teams.
Yes,
but Georgia, I mean, good grief! They're the new Alabama. It's going to be very, very big upset if they lose. I'd love to see TCU win it, but there's no way.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Georgia in the next couple of years, if they can maintain this intensity, or if they'll just turn into your, maybe make a New Year's Six bowl game or a decent New Year's Six.
They're in a great position. I think they'll maintain it.
I think they will. I mean,
Alabama has really maintained it. I know everybody's mad about this season, but I mean, give me a break. It's one play away from being in the playoff.
Yes.
2 plays away from being undefeated, but. Yeah, I know we talked about that. It's a shame.
I don't need to relive that.
Auburn's 75 plays away from being undefeated.
Hey, good job.
I'm just guessing.
Well, okay. I thought you had an actual number. It's probably a little less than that, honestly.
Might be down to 50. Yeah, that was a lot, though. All right, so that wraps up our show for this week and this season. I hate it's over, man. Football season is my favorite. Winter is not. I do not like winter, but I do like football season. And now we're in basketball season. It's just not the same.
Well, I mean, once football season's over, like you say, basketball season, then it's baseball season, then we're back in football season.
Yes.
So it's a never-ending cycle of sports.
It'll be here before you know it, and it'll be warm when it starts.
I know. Hey,
the weather changes completely during football season.
This week we're going to be down in the teens to single digits and wind chills below 0. So
yeah, it's just ugly. It's nasty.
August days will be welcomed.
I would take that right now. All right, that wraps up our show. Thanks for watching the PrepZone show, presented by Bevill State. Thank you, Bevill State, for sponsoring us this whole season. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jake, Aaron, behind the scenes. And we'll see you next season.